Hey fam, happy Saturday. Hope you're having a good weekend. It's Saturday the 13th, the day before that sappy industrial love Valentine's Day. If you're into it, I guess that's your thing. Go ahead. Okay, so I wanted to come on here so I can do my review of American Skin. And I watched this like a couple weeks ago. This is a movie that I rented on Prime. It was like $6, $7, and it was really worth the money. So let me get right into this. We have Lincoln Jefferson, and this character is played by Nate Parker, and we know him from Birth of a Nation and Beyond the Lights. And then we had Omar Scott, played by Omari Hardwick, and we know him from Power and Nobody's Fool. Then we have Kajani Jefferson, and he's played by Tony Espinoza, and he's from Pen 15. He to me is a new actor. I've never seen him before in anything. Then we have Jordan King. He's played by Sean Paul McGee, and he's from What Men Want and The Last Shift, a show. Then we have Tiana Jefferson. She plays the mother. Um, her the actress is Melania Jackson, and she's from FBI, the show on TV, and The Brick. That's on Netflix and NCIS. Then we have Officer Mike Randolph. He's played by Bo Knapp. And honestly, he's like typecast in this one because if you guys watched 7 Seconds on Netflix, which was an amazing show, watch it if you haven't. You're missing something good. And he's also from Black and Blue, and I believe he plays a shady ass cop. He is just typecast, okay? Then we have Officer Dominic, and he's played by Theo Rossi, and we know him from Sons of Anarchy, Luke Cage, and Lowriders, okay? I took a ton of notes on this, guys, because I really didn't want to miss anything here. Okay, so let me see. The movie starts with the cops pulling over a car, and the car has Lincoln Jefferson, who plays the father. He was driving, and he his people know him as Link. That's his nickname to everybody. And when they pull him over, he says, they stop him. The main thing, he does the hands on the wheel, follow instruction. They ask for the insurance and the registration, and he tells them, I'm reaching over my 14-year-old son to get the insurance out of the glove box, okay? And the cop says, this insurance is expired when he shows it to him. All right. And then cut from there, we see KJ, who is the son. Okay, Johnny Jefferson. Um, so the son, during this moment in the car, he's insisting on recording, and the cop makes him exit the car, and he demands that he put the phone down, basically. And from there, we flip into a year later, and there's a student filmmaker showing up to see Link at his house, and he shows up to do a documentation and interview him over his son's death, which happened during that pullover. So they don't show the whole thing that happened there at that particular point, and we flip to a year later. Okay, he explains that they will try to get it into a film festival, and if successful, it will be brought to the world, basically. So KJ is the son, and they're flipping back here before this all happened. And the son goes, they show him recording his son coming home from his first day at this new school. And his son, we said 14, so he's like, I guess, just entering high school. And he's asking him about his first day of school, basically. And you can see this was a young, happy, intelligent boy, according to his demeanor and the way he spoke. He was just a happy, intelligent young man. And basically, he's saying how different the school is. That basically they play rap music in the lunchroom. Surprise, surprise, white school. Um, they're different. They have all these different mini restaurants in the cafeteria, basically, and you could pretty much eat anything that you want. And then he stops for a second. He's like, there wasn't a single fight all day long. So this is him, just really seeing huge differences in the last school that he went to, which was obviously a black public school, versus this newer private school that he's going to now. Um, then they go into the history of Link, the father, and it says he served 2 terms in Iraq as a Marine infantry rifleman. Okay, that was his specialty there. Then we have a part where KJ, the son, he's in his room and he's having a FaceTime conversation with one of his friends, and he's supposed to be studying, basically. And So he's with one of his classmates at his old school. So this is at the old school where this conversation took place, or, when he was going to the old school. And he explains how we have a constitutional, lawful right to attack someone who, even a cop, who attacks them. That's what KJ is telling to his friend. And dad is walking up hearing this and he's like, hold on, like he shuts him down. And he's like, those laws weren't written for black people. He's he's having to have that come gosh, that jacked up talk that you have to have with your kids that basically says that these are the laws and these are how they're written, but you were not in mind when they put pen to paper to write these laws. You have rights, but you kind of don't. That's literally what it boils down to. Okay, so to get his son into a good school, he took a job as a janitor at the school that his son was going to. Okay, so he's not with the mother. He's a single father, and he takes care of his son by himself, working at the school his son goes to. Okay, so from there we see Omari, who is Link's brother, military brother, and basically he just finished chemotherapy, and we're at that moment where he's in the house speaking to the young man who's making the documentary about the murder, basically, of KJ, and he's talking to him and he's telling him basically that he just finished chemo and basically the cancer has metastasized and that he didn't want to continue with the chemo since it's already metastasized and he didn't want to risk losing his hair. He's ready to go. He's got no more fight left in him basically. Okay, so then we see the family's headed to the courthouse for the grand jury decision, basically, to decide if they're going to press charges on the police officer who killed KJ. And surprise, surprise, no conviction. Happens every time, right? We're used to it. Damn shame. Okay, then we see immediately after this decision is made, there's protests and riots that are going on in the streets, and buildings are being burnt down, and the city is just it's in chaos. It's normal. Okay, so police officer Mike Randall, no, I'm sorry, the chief of police goes to KJ's mom's house after this, and he's at the house, inside the house, and there's another police officer in the doorway. So he's like right in the house, and the mom's sitting there with her family, and she has a nephew who's a teenager. I believe he's 16 years old. And the police chief is asking her to get on the news and to make a public statement asking for people to stop rioting, to stop the violence basically. And her nephew went in. He's like, "Oh, ain't that a bitch? Now y'all want to talk about stopping violence?" And he was like, "You killed my cousin." Like his cousin was so hyped up. I really thought that those cops, they were acting like they wanted to move in on him and do the same thing to him in that moment. But he had every freaking right to be pissed and go the fuck off, especially in the comfort of his auntie's house. I mean, it's just amazing. Okay, so while this is going on at her house with the cops trying to get her to plead for them, basically, at Link's house, he's sitting there with his brother, the Omari Hardwick, basically his character, and he sees her on the TV, and he says she's asking for peace, pointing out how the violence took KJ's life in the first place. Okay? So when it's on their side, it's all good, but when we start to react to it, now there's a problem. Okay, so Link feels worthless and useless at this point, and you see him going to the bathroom, freaking out, crying. He threw up. And then from there, we see the next day, Link is in a car driving, and the young guy who's doing the documentary is in the back seat, along with two other students. So one's doing the camera, one's doing the interview, and the other one's just there for assistance, a young lady. And so they're taking a drive in the car, and they're asking him, where are we going? And he's saying we're going to the courthouse to file papers for a petition to have the police captain dismissed. That's what their goal is now. Okay, so they stop at the house. He's like, I got to make a stop at a friend's house. And when he makes a stop, he asks Jordan if he can drive, basically, because he's not feeling too well. Completely understandable after the crap he just went through, okay? So he goes in the house, leaves the kids in the car. Then he comes back out, and when he comes out, he has the chief of police with him, and you could tell he has like the chief of police hands behind him, and the students are freaking out, like, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And it becomes very apparent that some shit is about to pop off, basically. And he makes it clear to them as soon as he gets to the car, don't stop filming. He wants filming. He wants all of this caught on tape. So basically, they head to the police station where Link and his crew, which consists of his best friend Omari's, why can't I think of his character's name? Him, his uncle, and some other guys, basically. So these are like ex-military men, basically. So they're strapped and they know what to do with those weapons. Okay, so they go into the police station and immediately they start taking over everything and everybody. They got cops, grab the cops. They're taking everyone as hostages pretty much, and they cuff all the cops basically and set them down. And Link has Officer Mike Randall, the one who murdered his son, in an interrogation room, and he's having that come to Jesus moment with the father of the young teenage boy that he murdered. And he keeps saying that he didn't mean to shoot and kill KJ. All right. Then we have outside of the police station, the SWAT, police, media swarm outside. It all becomes sort of a frenzy because they were somehow notified of what was going on there. Okay, so then the negotiator ends up calling the phone inside the police station, and Link finally answers the phone, letting them know who he is basically, and everyone is okay, and that he wants his son. He wants his son back. That's all he's stating, and he hangs up the phone. Okay, the college students who are freaking out over all this end up having a little private moment where they're trying to figure out what to do and deciding there really isn't anything that they can do but continue filming just like they were. So then we have Link's ex, KJ's mom. She calls Link on the cell phone and she FaceTimes him, and she's asking him to give up and to do this peacefully. He goes off about how black people are the only ones asked to react with non-violence. He says white people don't march or protest, they react with force. And this ain't nothing but the damn truth. They have never been concerned with anybody else doing anything as far as violence is concerned on the level or the hypocrisy rate that they do of black people. All right. Then we have the cops who are outside cut off his phone basically. They cut off the cell phone signal so he loses the call to his ex wife. All right. Then Link proceeds to get the in house inmates and a few police station employees to act as a jury to rightfully try Officer Mike Randall. They wouldn't give him that official hearing, to press charges on this police officer. So he figures he'll have his own people do it basically. And the inmates are the cops are freaking out about this when they realize what he's doing, and he lets them know that these inmates here are all non-violent offenders. Okay, so then Mike, one of the police officers, Theo Rossi's character, he's the Latin dude here, and he states that, oh, I'm sorry, this is the guy who killed KJ, that one, Mike. He looks over and he says, there's no officers. This isn't a jury of my peers. Link replies, welcome to my world. And isn't that the truth, y'all? Side note, I served on a jury last year, and in that jury, for a black man who was on trial, I was the only black person that was there, period. There was one black person, and I sat on that jury. Okay, so I just see how this works. Okay, so then the trial begins, and a foreman is named, well, no, it was a black woman who served as a previous foreman, for a court case aside from this. And they named her the foreman, and one of the inmates is like, you want me to have a say? He's like, you know where I'm from? Do you know where I'm from? You know what I've seen these cops do to me? And they wonder what will happen basically to the cop, which way, one way or another, what's going to happen to him, whatever we decide. And Link isn't really saying right now. Gotta make sure this thing's still recording. Okay, so he says he doesn't know. So the other cops tell what happens basically. They start talking about that night and everything in question. He claims that the insurance was expired, the cop that was over on the dad's side, and Link says, "You wouldn't let me get the new card." Link asks, "Was it proven I had insurance?" They say, "Yes, it was." Okay. So Officer Mike says their white Honda Civic was speeding. He tried to tell the story using the deceased, saying the deceased. And Link checked him real quick and he says, "My son's name is Kijani Jefferson." Call him by his name. He's not the deceased. All right, so Link brings up how he kept saying he was reaching over his 14-year-old son, and Officer Mike was still intimidated and scared for his life. All right, that's what he's pointing out here. Link says, "So you saw him get his phone and you put your gun away, right?" And he says, because he had already pulled the gun out, demanding that he put that phone away, and he wouldn't do it. He was getting that phone because he was recording, and he said, "So once you saw, that it was a phone, did you put your gun away?" And he says, "No." He says, "We are not taught to de-escalate." This is another reason why defunding the police department is critical. If they train them this way, they're asking for this type of shit to happen. It is totally possible for a situation that you felt uncomfortable with to become a non-threatening situation, and now you can put your weapon away. It's possible, okay? So he wouldn't stop recording, so I pulled him from the car, taking this little 14-year-old boy from the car, okay? He demanded he put the phone away, and KJ didn't listen, and he tried to run, all right? He was shot 3 times in the back. In the back. 14-year-old boy running away. Let's shoot him in the back. It's a good idea. Okay, and then Link says, "And then what?" And he says, "Then I went home." He said, "I was following procedure. Wait for superiors to arrive." Y'all, this kills me every time. Yet another reason for defunding the police department. I spoke about this in my 16 shots video because this is exactly what they're supposed to do. They go home. They go home. There's no set amount of time for them to have. They can speak to whoever they want to. They can get a story together. This is the procedure that the police officers have, and nobody else has that right. And that's some straight up bullshit, and you know it. Okay? So then we see Theo Rossi. This is the Hispanic cop who's sitting there. And he says, they were speeding. And he says, yes. And Link is like, did you clock them? And he says, no. The driver had No, if the driver had insurance, this wouldn't have happened. That's what he keeps sticking with, okay? Jury members begin asking questions at this time, and they say, "Can you pull someone over without knowing actual speed?" And the cop says yes. And they're all kind of freaked out by that. Like, that's some bullshit yet again, okay? So then the other cop starts with black on black murder, and no one wants to talk about those statistics. Of course, they're going to go there. Let's go there, okay? So an inmate brings up white on white murders and Asian on Asian crime, and the cop says blacks saturate jails. Inmate says, "Funny how the most oppressed are the ones being locked up, basically." And the cop says how slavery was hundreds of years ago and to get over it. And the inmate checked him, basically stating, "Would you say the same thing about the Holocaust?" They always want to give it up like that to black folks. But we can be open, honest, and have compassion for Jews who went through the Holocaust, right? Mm-hmm. So then there's a Latin cop there, a woman, and she speaks her mind basically on the oppression of women, even in her cop role. And he says he can see that for women and even Jews, but for them, this is literally how this Latin cop is talking. Like, we have feelings for y'all, but not these motherfuckers. Defund the police, okay? So they make it. He says they make it very hard, and he's called out for his racism. Fellow white cop speaks out how they're always called racist. KKK and Nazis are racist. Not me. I don't see color. I've had many partners of color. Our chief is black. We can't be racist. The inmate says, "That's like saying I can't be sexist because I'm married to a woman." Facts. Okay. So they point out that programming is programming. The inmates are telling the cops this. Cops says a lot of what black people have to deal with is based on the way they act. Look at hip hop music. You think I want my daughter to deal with people who think that way, let alone come to my house? Hell no. The inmate tells him, you let your kids listen to it and you buy it, right? And he's like, you keep it moving. Black people think they have to live that life to make the music, and they pay for it with our lives, basically. And he says, you all come by it and appropriate it, fetishize it, right? So the cop says, that's a reach. Maybe blacks and Latinos are the thugs they claim they are in their music. The Latin inmate steps in at this point because it was Theo Rossi, the Latin dude, who made that last statement. And this inmate checks the fuck out of him in Spanish. You don't even know what he says. They don't put the words at the bottom of the screen. But that interaction lets you know he checked this. He checked the fuck out of him, okay? And it was good, okay? From there, the racist white cop in row 2, so no name here, from earlier claims it ain't race, it's class, education. Link asks about his kids. You know, do you have kids? Yes. Are they in public schools? Yes. He says private schools. I'm sorry, they're not in public school, they're in private schools. And he says private schools are built like colleges and public schools are built like jails. All right. This is a race problem. So you can call this anything you want as far as, because I see a lot of white people try to say it's class, it's class, it's class. Now, class may be a hindsight, um, a hindsight issue that's affected by it, but it starts with race. That's always where it starts at, okay? He says, I sacrificed everything to put my son in a better position and couldn't save him from you. And the officer, Mike, says, why couldn't he have complied? Why couldn't he have complied? And Link says, because we're fucking tired. If y'all took a second to think, I didn't mean to shoot your son. The cop cuts in here and he says, there was a threat and I was scared. Okay. Through this back and forth, basically, between Link and the cop who killed his son, it becomes crystal clear that Link was slowing down between two speed bumps at this point. He's then questioning him in the perfect manner to get the exact true story to come out here, okay? And slowing down between two speed bumps, not speeding up, and that the cop saw two black people when he slowed the car down. And that's the reason that they pulled their ass over, okay? Then Officer Mike admits to profiling them because people are tired of getting their cars and houses broken into, and they have to pull black and Latino people over, basically. So then Omari character sets in here and he says, there it is. You profiled, and if you hadn't, KJ would still be alive today. Period. All right. Then we have an inmate who jumps up at this point and grabs after the cop who had beat him and arrested him and assaulted, and he assaults the cop. He punches him, and then they drag the inmate away. And at that moment, that cop who got punched grabs a gun from one of them and shoots Link's uncle in the shoulder. So now we have like the first gunfire and the first assault that took place in the police station. Okay, so, but he's okay. I mean, he's injured, he's bleeding, but he's all right. So they send the jury away, and because his uncle got injured during that, no, it's because they took the inmate who was part of the jury, they took him away. They replace him with Jordan, the college student who's filming the documentary, and the college student doesn't want to do it. They're everybody's stressed out, and Link tells him, "You have to do this. You've seen everything here. I know you won't be biased because that young man is not. He's mixed. I guess he's black and white." So let me see. He replaces the 12th juror, and at this time, they send the jurors back to deliberate and vote, and a vote goes. Immediately when they get in there, they vote. And all the inmates immediately say guilty, and 3 white people say non-guilty. The 3 white people that are there, and they begin talking, and the white woman juror says how hard it is for cops. I think she's a secretary there at the office, and their families and their reputations. And there's a young white girl who was there who was paying a ticket, and she's one of the jurors in the room, and she says she wants to know why the cop got to leave the crime scene and go home. Doesn't everyone have to stay and give a statement? No, they don't. The inmate says he was getting his story straight. Of course, that's what we all think, right? I mean, why else? Why else? If anything, they always tell us, hell, if somebody watched their parents or their child get murdered in front of them, the cops want to speak to them immediately. They don't give a fuck about what shock you're in, how hurt you are. They want to talk to you right now. And that's your personal people that you love. This is, you just witnessed something. Anyway, okay. So the inmate says he has a chance to get his story straight, and the old white woman there says that maybe he was traumatized or in shock, and the white girl says seeing your kid get killed has to be traumatizing too. Okay, so all that white secretary wants to do is just give this cop every excuse, like they always do. There's always somebody. Let me just stop, y'all. I can go on and on this subject. Okay, so then at this time, Jordan steps in and he says that he is middle class with an uncle who is a cop. And this young man, you can tell he's intimidated, he's scared, but that he wants to be so unbiased and he wants to get to the bottom and give the truth here. And he gives the most unbiased, honest, and detrimental answer, not drawing on race, basically. Um, He says that banners and stickers saying back the police are all over this police station. And he says there's nothing for a kid who is expected to be a patriot. A kid who was expected to be a patriot. He says, how could you have been proud to be an American only to be shot down because of his American skin? Hence the title of the movie. His American skin. That's literally how he's branded with it. How can you be this patriot when you're treated as such? All right, so from there, it talks about great nations aren't great because they oppress. They're great because they liberate. Police and soldiers should be gatekeepers of this truth. He says this sucks. If it means us having to make this man accountable so all cops would take a beat before acting, then so be it. And this is what it boils down to. If they took just, and honestly, everyone should have to go through the court system when it comes to a crime that's committed, a question of a crime. Everyone should have to face it the same way. But they're not penalized at all. Ain't no cops going to jail. Ain't no hell, half of them are being let go and turned right back to their job. Very few are fired. Or they might end up at a desk job for a little while. It's just absolute hypocrisy. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so Amari, they show him in the room and he's coughing at this point. He actually coughs up blood. You could tell it's at the end of that time for him. And basically, you see the jury return at this time, and the forewoman stands up and she reads the verdict, and she basically guilty. He's guilty. And at this point, Link, you saw all the cops like freak out. They jump up and they can't do anything because they're handcuffed to like the chairs and the desks that they're at. But you see them all physically react to the verdict. And at this time, Link makes the cop in question here FaceTime his family. He wants him to make a last call to him. And so he does, and he talks to his son, little boy, and his wife, and he's basically saying goodbye to them. And the wife is freaking out. No, no, I'm coming down there. And he ends the call with him. And when he hangs up, he puts a gun to the cop's head. And at that time, all the cops really buck up. They're jumping up, they're trying to do anything, and they can't. And Link pulls the trigger at this point, and nothing happens. Okay? So Officer Mike at this point breaks all the way down. He's on his knees, he's crying, he's freaking out, he's losing it. And Link says to the cop, that feeling I've had for 1.5 years, now you know it. Now you know exactly what I've been living through. Then we see Jordan asks Link, he's like, how did you know that they would convict, name him guilty, to make this cop see what's going on here? And Link's he just knew. I'm like, Hell, we all know if they really got a day in court with somebody who wasn't a cop sitting in the freaking jury, what would happen. Okay, so Link lets everyone go basically at this point, and Officer Mike tells him again how sorry he is, but that he wants to walk out with him basically. He's like, not as a hostage, but not as an enemy. And he's like, I want to walk with you. And he does, basically calling out to let all the cops out there know that Link is with them and that he's unarmed. And as soon as Link rounds the corner, they sharpshoot him in the head and they murder him dead, just like that. Okay? And the media, right after this, frames him as a mentally unstable, in cahoots with Islamics. Oh, what do I don't even know what the heck that says. This is what they always do to black men when they have a confrontational incident with police. They always go try to find something and make it into something else. It's so normal. I'm like, pay attention when they show things like this on the news. They will take that black man and try to make him into something mentally insane. And he wasn't. And the only part of him that wasn't right was the fact that that cop killed his son. Anyway, y'all, long review here. I'm sorry, but I have to get all this in here. Excellent movie. Please do watch it. You know this is my thing here. I'll give that movie a 9 out of 10. Excellent movie. Please watch. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it to the end here. Press the like button. Tell me what you think. Have a good night.